So Jim Ratcliffe breaks his silence on Erik ten Hag and would want Thomas Tuchel if it was up to him. Manchester United made contact with Simone Inzaghi, plus all the latest Manchester United news and transfer news that will keep you right up to date with everything. Welcome to Man United Review. My name's Jamie. Before we get into it, smash a like on the video and let's jump straight on into it. So as you can imagine, all the talk of the town at the moment is still regarding the manager situation, still regarding Erik ten Hag. There's been some pretty interesting updates over the last couple of days, so we'll run through who said what, where we're at with it, and then you can let me know what you think about everything in the comments below. So let's start with Laurie Whitwell. So Laurie Whitwell said, people that know these guys running the club are adamant that Erik ten Hag is not under pressure to get sacked, but he is under pressure to get results. There's been daily communication all week between ten Hag and the hierarchy. They are doing things normally. I would be surprised if anything like an end game for ten Hag taking place right now. So Laurie Whitwell was really credible when it comes to United news, suggesting there that he's not necessarily under pressure to get sacked, but he's under pressure to get the results. And, you know, for me, that's 6 and 2/3. You don't get the results, you're going to lose your job. And that's the way I interpreted that. Laurie Whitwell also said the hierarchy wants to remain patient in a process that they had expected to have some dips. They see the work done in training by Erik ten Hag and his staff and appreciate the level of tactical detail. However, the poor performances risk testing that patience. So that was both reports from Laurie Whitwell, credible when it comes to Man United. Laurie Whitwell also said, so Jim Ratcliffe is planning to attend the match in Birmingham to watch the game against Aston Villa. Ultimately, it will be Sir Jim Ratcliffe who decides Erik ten Hag's fate in concert with Sir Dave Brailsford and Joe Glazer, taking recommendations from Omar Barada and Dan Ashworth. And then we had Steve Kay, not the most credible source, being honest with you, but saying that even if United beat Aston Villa, there will be conversations taking place over Erik ten Hag's future during the international break. So a few more updates there from Laurie Whitwell. There's loads to go through, though. There's loads more from fairly credible sources as well regarding the manager future. But Laurie Whitwell suggesting that, firstly, they're not talking about sacking ten Hag. They're just obviously looking at the results because it is a results-based business, and the results will follow suit. So if the results don't improve, then ten Hag's going to obviously lose his job anyway. And the fact that Sir Jim Ratcliffe, he's done an interview, I'll go through his quotes next, is also in the UK. The fact that and so it looks like, looks like tomorrow's going to be a big game and a big kind of result. That's what it kind of feels like. But we'll go through what Sir Jim Ratcliffe said. So Sir Jim Ratcliffe on Erik ten Hag's future. I don't want to answer that question. I like Erik. I think he's a good manager, but at the end of the day, it's not me who decides. It's the management team at Manchester United who have to decide now how best to manage the team. But the team that runs Manchester United has only been together since June or July. They weren't here in January, February, March, or April. Omar Barada, Dan Ashworth, and they came in July. They've only been here a few weeks. They haven't been here long. So they have to take stock and make sensible decisions. Our goal is very clear. We want to bring Manchester United back to where it should be, and that's not the case yet. Obviously, that's very clear. So Sir Jim Ratcliffe, tying that in with the Laurie Whitwell news I brought you before, suggesting that it's not going to be him that sacks Erik ten Hag. Ultimately it will be. I think he'll have to deliver the decision and have that conversation, or at least kind of conform with Sir Dave Brailsford and Joe Glazer, going off of what Laurie Whitwell was saying, but he's not going to be the one that judges it. He's going to take the recommendations from Omar Barada, Dan Ashworth and Jason Wilcox and co, and then they're going to be the ones that will ultimately feed the decision and the feedback back to Sir Jim and Dave Brailsford, and then they're going to obviously make the decision based on their recommendations, which is probably about right, probably about fair. But again, there's been some really good updates on, I don't want to say contradicting that, but kind of, giving another idea on how Sir Jim feels regarding the whole situation, which I'll go through in a second. But let me know what you think about all of that so far. Now, obviously, in the report, then it just said about Joe Glazer. Let me put my tongue back in. So, obviously, in those reports, there it was saying around a big meeting. So, this is what's been confirmed by Adam Crafton and Laurie Whitwell, two credible sources, both work for The Athletic. The club's hierarchy is due to gather in London on Tuesday for a long-planned meeting. Sir Jim Ratcliffe, Sir Dave Brailsford, Omar Barada and Dan Ashworth, Jason Wilcox and Joe Glazer will be present, among others. It is unclear whether the team's performance will be on the agenda at the meeting. Of course it will. They're not all going to sit there and just ignore the elephant in the room. Do you know what I mean? That's like, whether it's an actual scheduled discussion, but they will have that discussion. You can't, you know what I mean? I don't think anyone's naive enough to think they're not going to talk about the manager's situation or the results at that meeting. And then in the article, Adam Crafton said the following. So Joe Glazer is flying in from the US to attend. CFO Roger Bell and COO Colette Roach will also be present. Any call on Erik ten Hag's future will come from the ownership, with Ratcliffe, Brailsford and Joe Glazer forming the three-person committee. They would base their conclusions on recommendations from those on the ground, notably Barada, Ashworth and Jason Wilcox. That's what I was saying before. So ultimately, the decision will be made by the sounds of things, Sir Jim, Joe Glazer and Dave Brailsford, but they'll do it based on the recommendations of Barada, Ashworth and Wilcox. So those three kind of senior executives are going to feed it up into the more senior executives or the owners, who will ultimately end up making the decision regarding Erik ten Hag. That meeting, by the way, it said it's a scheduled meeting, so they were having that meeting anyway. So this isn't one where they're drafting in like an emergency meeting almost. Apparently they've got one scheduled for every international break where they're going to have like regular catch-ups and regular kind of meetings and stuff as well. There was reports one of the last international break, wasn't there, that they all had a meeting in Barcelona. So it's a scheduled meeting, so they're not doing it specifically to talk about the manager, just to be clear on that. And then this is what the Muppeteers had to say regarding the situation, which I think will tie everything together nicely. So he said, there are serious concerns from the management team, Omar, Wilcox and Ashworth, about our performances. There is a feeling that Ineos don't want to act so quickly. The hierarchy wanted more time to put things into place. People at Ineos are not very tolerant on how things are going. Ratcliffe is looking at United and saying things are bad. He wants to leave it to Omar and Dan, but it's becoming untenable. And if pressure gets too much, Ratcliffe will force them to make a decision. So what the Muppeteers was kind of explaining was the fact that, yes, it's not necessarily going to come down from Sir Jim to make the decision. It'll be Dan Ashworth, Wilcox and Omar Barada. But ultimately, it is Ineos's name that's in the mud. And it is Sir Jim Ratcliffe's name that's in the mud. So what he was saying was there'll come a time where he puts pressure on those to say, well, what on earth is going on and what are we doing about it? Because you've got to remember that it's not necessarily, losing to Brighton or like those sort of games. It's the fact that we're getting embarrassed on TV in front of millions of people that I think will be having the impact. Losing badly to Liverpool, losing badly to Tottenham. Do you know what I mean? If we lose badly again to Aston Villa at the weekend, these are the sort of games where, it is ultimately, like I said, it's Sir Jim's name and it's Ineos's name that's getting dragged through the mud there. And there'll come a time when, if the people below them don't necessarily make the decision where Sir Jim and Ineos might, I don't say force, he didn't say force them, but put pressure on them to find out what's going on and to make a decision. And that's the way. And so that ties, I think, everything kind of nicely. So just to summarize that part, obviously, Sir Jim didn't back Erik ten Hag when he had the opportunity to. He kind of distanced himself from it, in my opinion. Then it looks like the decision ultimately is going to come from Barada, Ashworth and Wilcox, feeding their kind of recommendations to Sir Jim, Dave Brailsford and Joe Glazer. And it could be that all kind of comes to light on the meeting on Tuesday. So but let me know what you think about all of that in the comments. Now, in terms of replacements, it's been said, now this come from an unknown, I don't know the credibility of this source, right? It was reposted by credible kind of aggregator accounts online, so I'm going to assume fairly credible, but I don't know the authenticity myself. It's not a source that I've kind of come across before, so I would say take it with a pinch of salt for now. But it's been claimed that Manchester United have been courting Simone Inzaghi for months, and a phone call via an intermediary arrived recently too. Given that a transfer would be impossible at this time, the Inter coach confirmed that he is very happy where he is. So again, I would say take that story with a pinch of salt, but if true, that's an interesting option that United have actually called Inzaghi to have a conversation with him, which he's rejected, because obviously this is the problem we're going to have with replacing Ten Hag now, is the top managers that you might want long term are probably not going to leave their current jobs. So you might then be looking at people that are out of jobs, and that list is not very good. But yeah, would be an interesting option. But again, I would say take it with a pinch of salt. But if true, that does seem like the writing's on the wall for Ten Hag, doesn't it? Because why would you speak to Inzaghi if you're not planning to remove him? And then there was another Italian outlet as well, or Italian journalist, sorry, this one a little bit more credible, saying that Manchester United in past days offered to Simone Inzaghi to take over the managerial job with immediate effect during the international break, but Inzaghi declined. So the two Italian outlets or Italian journalists suggesting that Man United have offered Inzaghi the job, but he's declined it because obviously he's currently in a position at Inter Milan. But that's a really interesting option. Let me know what you think about that in the comments. He's not the only replacement we've been linked heavily with though. So firstly, the Muppet Tears said that Ratcliffe likes Thomas Tuchel. Ratcliffe wanted to hire Thomas Tuchel, and if it was entirely up to him, he would hire Thomas Tuchel. So apparently, the Muppet Tears are saying that Sir Jim Ratcliffe, if it was his choice, he would go for Thomas Tuchel, which is interesting because he was a player that we actually offered the job to in the summer, but we couldn't get a deal done for whatever reasons. Loads of reports on that, financial packages, control around decisions, and him wanting a sabbatical, all these kind of things. So something happened anyway where Thomas Tuchel decided not to accept the job. And then also Paper Sport, I don't know the credibility of, saying that Thomas Tuchel was close to replacing Erik ten Hag in the summer, only for talks to break down due to disagreements about how much power the German would have and the financial package. Tuchel has supporters in the hierarchy and is considered a world leading coach. So, it's interesting. I think the result tomorrow, or even the performance tomorrow, like I've said to you a few times, go and read in between the lines of what like the Muppeteers and a few other people are saying. It's not just about the results, it's the performances and the results as well. And they want to see reactions and they want to see things changing and something kind of, but at the moment, we're just repeating the same cycle and the same patterns that were there last season. And last season, there was an excuse for it with the injuries, and there was no excuse for it this season. So it has to come down to the tactics and the management and the style of play, in my opinion. I just can't see the wood through the trees around that at the moment, because, do you know what I mean? Like, it was bad last season, and it's been bad this season. And it's this, like, if you put the last two kind of performances or last few results, do you know what I mean? The Porto performance and the Tottenham one, if that was last season, it would be no different. It would be a copy and paste of exactly what we've seen last season. So I do think they're looking more for the performances as well and that style of play. And just literally at the time of recording this video, Fabrizio Romano's come out with some updates. So I've not got any slides done, so apologies. But he said that the game against Aston Villa would be crucial for the future of Ten Hag. The result is important, but they want to see a reaction and also the body language with several things. So Jim had the opportunity to say Erik ten Hag is untouchable when asked, but he didn't, because internally they are discussing about his situation. And that's Romano saying this, by the way. So that's really interesting. Internal talks are ongoing about the future of Erik ten Hag. So, if Romano's saying that the talks are happening, the discussions are happening, so Jim refused to say that he was untouchable, and that is, well, it's not looking good, is it? Not looking good in terms of, or maybe it is looking good for you if you're not a fan of Ten Hag and you want him to be sacked. Maybe it is looking good for you if you want Ten Hag in. Maybe it's not looking good for you there, or it's not looking good for Ten Hag either way. But there was you all up to date with the latest Manchester United news and transfer news. Please smash a like on the video on your way out. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you are new. Leave your comments below because I do enjoy reading them. See you in the next one.